each one of us is born into this life for a deeper and higher purpose. And our responsibility is to discover that purpose and then to live it. And then the Bhagavad Gita gives you step-by-step manual of how to live that life. And I like to call it, it's in the Bhagavad Gita, that it talks about three paths, but it's not an either or kind of path. They're like just three different paths with which you begin your journey. And eventually those paths merge together.
Welcome to The Deep Coach, the podcast where we explore the transformational journeys that shape us and that propel us to change the world. I'm your host, Jonathan Ermida, and in each episode, we sit down with those who have journeyed into the depths of spiritual transformation and who are now reshaping the world through their presence and their work. In listening to these incredible human beings, you'll find insight, inspiration, and practical tools to support your journey as a coach and as a human being. Today's guest is my good friend, Amrita Singh. Amrita is a master certified coach through the ICF with over 25 years of business and leadership experience and one of our very dear global partners. Amrita runs our DCI India cohorts through her business Back to Source and is one of the most unassumingly powerful forces I know. Simply put, she makes things happen. In this episode, we get a behind the scenes of what makes Amrita so unique, from marrying into a different Indian caste to starting and eventually selling India's first corporate daycare business, to eventually discovering coaching through divine alignment. Amrita shares a ton of insightful nuggets of wisdom all throughout the episode. I hope you enjoy. Amrita, it is so good to be here with you. You mentioned to me that one of the earliest seeds of, you can call it awakening or insight, actually happened when you were a little girl as a result of your mom, who was an English literature teacher. She would read you Shakespeare as a child.
Yeah.
And you remember her quoting you, "To thine own self be true." Can you share a little bit more about the impact that quote had and your mom had on your life in that moment?
Yeah. As far back as I can remember, my mom would always, I don't remember anything else of Shakespeare that she said to us except this one line, to thine own self be true, and it shall follow, and all of the rest of that as well. But I think that the seed that it sowed within me is, what does it mean to be true to myself? Because that part she didn't tell me. She just kept saying, to thine own self be true. And I think that's really what maybe, and as I look at it now, is from where that seed of my lifelong quest of figuring out who am I really. I think it was sown then. I didn't realize it at all at that point in time. Because if I look at my life, it's like pre-motherhood and post-motherhood. And pre-motherhood is everything about people pleasing, adapting, adjusting, having fun, making friends, heartbreak, all of that, pre-motherhood. And then post-motherhood was when I started questioning this piece of, is this what life is really all about? Kind of piece. And more about that, I'm happy to share. But I think the seed started then when I was a little girl and blossomed when I became a mother.
It's such an appropriate quote, it seems like, both for you, but also for your mom, from the standpoint of you both married into an interfaith marriage.
Yeah.
Can you first describe what you know of your mom and dad coming together and the impact that had on both sides of the family?
Yeah. Um,
And I guess,
so,
sorry to jump in here, for anybody that's unaware of Indian culture and customs, what it means to enter into interfaith marriage. For
yes. Yeah. So, I know that you are now aware of it, of what of Indian interfaith marriage is all about. But my parents got married. My dad Hindu, my mother Muslim, and they got married to each other. They also came from fairly very different economic backgrounds, and which was also another piece. And so my father was the complete let's have fun kind of guy. And my mother was this quiet disciplinarian, a piece of it in our whole upbringing. And yet I think the piece is that neither of them imposed any of their culture or any of their religious understanding, if they had any, on us as we were growing up as children. And I remember my mom making us even write in our forms when we would apply to school that our religion is humanitarianism. And that's pretty much how we grew up. And that probably was the first spelling I learned as well. And that's so she just grew, raised us, both my brother and me, to be this really good human beings. And she did it with the song and with stories, and it had nothing to do with any form of religion that they both had been born into. And she was very, very particular about that. And so I would say, okay, I grew up then saying, I'm an Indian. Humanitarianism is my religion, and I'm an Indian. And I would say it with great pride, not knowing anything else other than that.
Were there any Hindu or Muslim customs that your family did growing up?
Well, I think the only thing that we did was eat the food from on both sides. And, the celebrations of all festivals, not just Hindu and Muslim, but all celebrations of all festivals. And definitely the food. And that continues to have its impact. My mom was a great cook, and we were all our foodies in our family. And that's the only piece that I really got from that.
Yeah, yeah. And then you married yourself. So a husband also of a different caste and of a different faith.
Yeah, I got married to a Hindu, but of a different caste. And I think that's when I really felt that, oh, I know I was Muslim and Hindu, and I started experiencing the impact of having been born into a multicultural family. Um, Only when I got married into that family, because into another family which was, I would say, quite traditional, Hindu, Rajput family, and which is from the north of India. As I knew it, I mean, I didn't know much about it at all at that point in time. And everything that I learned about any kind of ritualistic kind of religion, or being even exposed to what Hindu rituals are, all came from my in-laws side of the family. And I was, like I told you, this people pleasing person. So I was like so in love with this man, and I wanted my in-laws to like just accept me and love me and, include me in their family. So I basically did everything that would support that without really questioning it, or without even resisting it. And that, appalled my mother greatly, from the way she had raised me to be this independent woman, thinking and financially independent. But it pleased my mother-in-law greatly. And I think somewhere between that, I think that who am I piece of it got a little blurred, or even set aside for a bit after I got married, because just being accepted and loved in that family uh, was my single pointed focus almost.
What do you remember of that time period of adapting yourself for others?
I think right from the clothes, right from so let's say from an external, the clothes that I wore, uh, I would never think about what I would wear when I was not married, but I had to think about that aspect. Some, cultural things that were expected of a woman to do, a married woman, when there were elders who came into the room, automatically stood up, not to give your space. I mean, my mom taught me that if there was an elder, or somebody needing the space, you'd get up and give it to them. But here it was no, because I'm the daughter-in-law of the house. There were certain expectations from me of how I should behave and show up, and so those were parts of it. The other was, I remember very clearly, was when I had my child, and like the right to name my child was not mine at all. It was like I'm giving birth to this new generation in the family and keeping the lineage going, and that was son. So my mother-in-law named my son, very different from the name that I wanted to give him. And I said, okay, that's also fine. It's part of the whole adapting piece of it. And yeah, I mean, I could go on with so many of those aspects and examples from there. but there were not at physical, mental, or even God to pray to, and how to a lot of those aspects. And I know when I think about it now that it was only from a space of love, because I see my mother-in-law was also married into that family, and hers was also multicultural, in the sense that not Hindu Muslim, but again two different kinds of Hindus, and she got married into the Rajput family, and she had done everything to create that space for her in that family and in that society. And so she wanted her daughter-in-law also to get that same space. So I know that it came from a space of love, for sure. But at that time, I mean, it felt like, what the hell is happening to me? I'm like losing who I am completely.
Were you aware of that? Did it feel like you were losing a part of yourself, or in the moment you were kind of owning the changes?
I was owning the changes, yes, but I had my mom, who was very strong influence and a constant reminder to me that, I didn't raise you to do this. I didn't raise you this manner. And she would keep trying to show me the mirror, but I refused to see it at that point in time. I was like, no, it's like I'm doing it out of love, and it's fine, It's perfectly okay for me to mold, bend, adapt, change, and it's fine. It's not a bother. And I actually believe that, I think, at some level, that it was perfectly okay to do that, and didn't realize the impact that it was having on me.
How did the birth of your son begin to change things for you?
I like to call it that it was hormones that played up in my favor. And suddenly I found my voice again, in terms of, I think it's also from this space of, having given birth to a little baby, and just that, uh, it, the sense of being there, that sense of responsibility for this little life that I brought into this world. And just this sense of, I have to be there for my little baby, and to be there for him, I need to be there for myself as well. And I think somewhere in that space, I reconnected with this whole uncovering or rediscovering of what does it mean to thine own self be true. And so I started asserting myself, in terms of what was okay, fine, you got to name the child, but hey, this is how I'm going to raise him. This is what's okay, this is what's not okay. And it did create, of course, a lot of friction, angst, uh, upheaval in all of that. And that was part of the uh, process, I think, of embracing motherhood and embracing myself once again.
Yeah, I like to say the mama bear comes out, and
Yeah. If you ask my husband, it was more like a lioness that suddenly began to roar.
lioness. Yes, I love that. I love that. Yeah, exactly. And you're like, this is now my territory of sorts.
Yeah.
I'm the one in charge here.
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what did your relationship internally to yourself? How did that start to shift your relationship to spirituality?
So I think that, around that time when I had my first child, I was working with all of these aspects of, adjusting, and what's okay, what's not okay, what I'll stand for, what I won't stand for. And it's important to say also that my husband, he took a very neutral stand. You figure it out, your battle. You fight it whichever way you want to, or deal with it whichever way you want to. And I'm neither against you nor will I be for you. It's like yours to deal with. And so I felt alone then, but I see the wisdom in it right now. The thing is that I was looking for ways in which, I mean that this is not the kind of life that I wanted, and this is not what I want to settle for. And I, at that time in my life, met with my spiritual mentor, who I call Ma. I was my Guruji. And I met her just because I went to attend a course, and I felt this magnetic pull towards her, which is another long story. But I used to go to her with, how do I deal with my mother-in-law? How do I deal with this person who's saying this to me? Or how do I deal with my boss? I was working at that time. And for everything that I would ask her, she would not offer me any kind of advice, so to speak, but would share something that had like a spiritual dimension to it. And I didn't know it then as, again, spiritual dimension to it. But this whole thing of, she would keep saying, she is what she is, he is what she is, bring a sense of acceptance and bring a sense of glad acceptance. And I would say, yeah, okay, but it's difficult to expect. I mean, she has these expectations, and I would go back and forth with her on it. But she would always bring like a spiritual response to everything that I offered her or went to her as a problem with, some kind of a spiritual solution. And because had this great sense of faith in her, I would try that out, whatever way of accepting and bringing a sense of compassion and forgiveness. Not in 100% kind of way, but a little bit I would keep trying, and I would meet with little success. So then I would feel like going back to her with something else the next time. And that's how I think, relationship with spirituality to solve some kind of surface level problems that I was facing with dealing with life. And here was someone offering me a spiritual kind of solution to look inward. And that's how I think the journey began.
Mm. What were some of the practices that you began to incorporate, books that you began to read that really supported you during that time?
So there's only one book that I have read since then and continue to read now and continue to study, which is the Bhagavad Gita. And each time that I have read it, each verse that I have been taught always has found different meaning. And I think it's not that the book has changed or what's written there has changed, but I think I each time would read it with a new lens, with a difference in the way that I was approaching it from my life. So Bhagavad Gita has been the scripture, the manual, the book that my ma taught us and continues to teach me, and the one that I go back to time and time again for anything. In terms of practices, I think, from a very simple kind of practice of one of the first practices she would ask us to do was just to witness. And I didn't know what witnessing meant, but just to witness and just see it for what it is without giving it any name, labeling it, judging it. Just a tree is a tree. The mic is a mic. Computer screen. From inanimate things to things that were more closer home. And that was one of the first few practices that she brought into my life. And another was that there is the sense of God. I always believed that there was God. I never knew where. I thought he lived high up on the mountain in some place and punish me if I did something wrong, and would shower me with blessings if I did something right. And so she taught me I would say, the art of prayer, which in our custom we call puja, which I had no idea about at all. I never grew up with it, and she taught that to me. And that instills this faith, love, and devotion within me. And even though it seems like idol worship, it's really the understanding that I'm like invoking those qualities of those different deities into me. And that continues to be a very powerful practice that I still follow, very religious.
Beautiful. For those that are unfamiliar with the Bhagavad Gita, what are the essential teachings, or what is the essential teaching that it teaches?
I would say that the most essential teaching that it teaches is that each one of us is born into this life for a deeper and higher purpose. And our responsibility is to discover that purpose and then to live it. And then the Bhagavad Gita gives you step-by-step, almost manual of how to live that life. And I like to call it, it's in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about 3 parts, but it's not an either or kind of path. They're like just 3 different paths with which you begin your journey, and eventually those paths merge together. So there's the path of knowledge, which is I want to know more about life, learn more about life, understand more about life, which is called Gyan Yoga. And then there is the knowledge of practice or action, which is you do certain actions in alignment with who you see yourself as. And that's Karma Yoga or the path of action. And there is my most favorite, which is called Bhakti Yoga, which is the path of love and devotion. And, being able to bring devotion and sacredness in everything that you do. And everything it becomes an offering then of love. And that's really essentially I would say, the broad understanding of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. Wonderful. So then the birth of your son was not only the beginning of your spiritual journey, but it was also the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey around that
Yeah.
time as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the little company and how that emerged? And yeah, we can talk a little bit about that whole journey.
Yeah, sure. So again, it was, I think like my spiritual journey came to me as something that I needed. And so I grew into it. My entrepreneurial journey also, I like to see as something that I needed and that I grew it kind of piece. Uh, because I was doing a corporate job, working first in a bank and then in an export house in a job that I absolutely loved. I loved everything about my job. There's nothing that I didn't enjoy. The friends, the work, the targets, the deadlines, the meetings, the travel, everything about it I absolutely loved. And it was, in the exports of home furnishings. So it got me to travel all around India and travel around the world and take Indian product across the world. I loved it. And when I had my son, my first child, when he was born, um, I just expected like somebody, either my mother-in-law or my mother, with whom now I had great relationships with, will come down to take care of them, my son, and nobody did. And they said, it's your responsibility, your child, you have to take care of it yourself. And so we started a daycare business called The Little Company. And when I say we, it was me and my best friend, still is my best friend today. And we started it out of our own need for a little lark. That we start a little company, the kids can go to the little company so the parents can go back to their big company. And we just basically grew it from there, one center at a time. And then we grew up to 16 centers over a 14-year period. We ran it for many organizations as in-house centers. We ran our own community centers. And we just grew it as an extension of us. We had 180 women working with us. And it was just, it was a big playground for our own kids who grew up there. And then for many of the other children that came there. And even till today, some of those relationships still are very, very alive in my life.
Sometimes when stories like these are shared, it shares, the highlights. Like, we started the company and then we got 16 locations and then, we sold it. And it sounds like everything was wonderful. Can you speak a little bit about some of the challenges of being an entrepreneur and starting your own thing? What were some of those early challenges that you experienced?
So I would say the first was that I thought I'm building this business so that I could be more with my children and spend more time with my children. I had my son then, and then my daughter was also born 3 years later. But that was not true at all. I did not get to spend time with my children. They were around me as I was building it, the centers, but I didn't get to spend time with my children. So the reason why I actually started the business was not happening at all. The other was we were the first daycare center to open in India. We had seen it. I'd seen it in my overseas trips and travels. People would just come back to work. And so there were people who were, the concept was great. People want, oh, it's a great idea. But people are not ready to give their most important asset to us, to people who never ever done anything in this space, other than having their own kids there. So I remember myself, standing at signals, giving out flyers, inviting people in to experience the center, having different kinds of events. And then when we started getting children, couldn't find the right caregivers. other than we thought two of us can manage. And then we got another, some, help from home. Our domestic help came home from home, and we started building it very organically. But then now when you have to grow to scale, how do you find the right people and then bring them into this space and have that same kind of love from them? So again, I recall us going in a local train in Bombay, and you have to travel in a local train in Bombay once in your life to realize how crowded it is. But that's where the people who came to work came from. And so I had to go to them and find those people and entice them to come and work for us almost. And then build that sense of culture almost, but to treat others like you want to be treated is used to be our only culture statement to everyone. And the highlight of it was that we had these 180 women. We started from 11 people, and those 11 people continued till the day before the business.
How long did you have that singular location before you began to expand?
Oh, we had it for 6 years. We had it for 6 years, and we didn't even think that we can expand it to another business, to another location. We were just so happy in that space, growing it over there. But geographically, the place where I lived, I had to travel an hour and a half every day with my babies in the car to go to that center that we had built, which was our first center, which was doing well. It was thriving. All of it was good. And we thought of taking it to a corporate space. So I said, okay, let me find a corporate that is close to my house, so I don't have to travel all the way. And that's how we found our first corporate daycare center, which was just from the piece of saying, let's build it close to my house. And when the corporate center took off and it was great success, then we said, oh, this corporate center is a great place. People come because there's already a demand for it. We can expand into it. The corporate is willing to make the capital investment with us as well. So it seemed very good from a cash flow perspective as well. And so that's how we started then this model of community centers that we built our own, and corporate centers that we then started marketing out.
How many corporate centers, how many community centers did you have?
If now this is 2012, so I may not be completely right with it, but I think that it was maybe 5 or 6 were the independent community centers, or maybe lesser, but there were more corporate centers between two cities then, Bombay and Delhi. And another quick story around that, since you asked about the speed bumps on the road, is there was a time when we had these two centers, one community and one corporate center. And my friend, her husband moved from India to London. And she said, what do I do? So I said, you have to go where your husband is. And that's also how we've been raised as Indians. You just follow your husband wherever he goes. And if he's going to London, you go to London. And I had a choice at that time as to what do I need to do. Should I shut this down because she's going away, or do I continue to build this as a business? And I chose to build it as a business. So she went away and I chose to build it as a business. And I said, the first thing is that even though we had a name called The Little Cup, my pet name is Amu. So everyone knew it as Amu and Binza Center. Nobody knew it as The Little Company. So we said, we need to create that separate identity from us and let it grow as a center, independent of us. And so we needed to get more people in who could run that place. So first thing I did was started recruiting like-minded people. Just come, experiment, see what you like, do what you like to do. And that's how we started growing that business. But and then there was no stopping there, one city to the other. And it just kept going.
And was it all self-financed, meaning the profits of the company, or you got support outside?
No, 100% self-financed. Started from our own savings, Bindu's and mine. The thing is that we would, at the end of every month, the money that we had collected through the fees, we would say, okay, now we've paid off all our salaries, paid everything else, paid everyone else. Oh, we have a little bit of money. So it started from, first was we could go out for dinner. Oh, we can start paying ourselves a bit. We can now hire a driver for the company. So we grew it that way completely. Never, ever overspent other than what we had got in. And then when we started this corporate center and independent center kind of model, that piece, the corporate center then helped us to find more independent centers. So it was started from our initial savings that we both put in equally, and then we just grew it and kept it cash flow positive throughout. And in fact, that was one of the reasons why we were looked at when an investment fund decided to buy us, because we had zero attrition. We had 180 employees. Nobody left after they joined us. And we had cash flow positive completely. And that's the reason why another company saw interest in wanting to buy us. And ironically, that was the reason why we decided to sell the business as well, because they asked us, the investment bankers, they asked us, what's the ROI per child? And I remember saying, I can tell you the name of all the children, but I cannot tell you what the ROI is per child. But that mindset of looking at businesses in ROI, I don't think I had then. I still don't have now. But that somehow didn't feel so right. And there were, of course, multiple other issues with which we decided that, okay, it's time is up, that what we could offer the business and what the business could give us. We started it for our children. Both our children had it had reached this zero-sum game.
So the fact that an investor came in, it shows that you hadn't made a name for yourself because they clearly saw the little company. Hey, this company is doing something right.
Yeah.
Was it a matter of that you were in so many locations and now becoming sort of more well-known?
So I would say that it was a combination of multiple things. One was, whenever we had to bid for a corporate daycare business, it would be through, they would give us like a request for proposal. Then we would submit that proposal and it would get into negotiations and conversation. And eventually it would always end up, in most cases, with two of us. And they had to decide between our main competitor and us. And sometimes we would win and sometimes they would win. But this competitor was a fully funded business. And right from the first day, they were fully funded by this investor. So when they were looking at consolidating the daycare business, they said it makes sense to take on competition, so to speak, from the investor's point of view. But the lady who used to run this other business, since we used to be waiting outside boardrooms so often, she and I became friends, sitting outside. And so she asked me one day, is that, why don't we just join forces together? So I said, I don't understand. In which way? How can we join forces together? So she said, would you be willing to sell your business? And that was the first time when I said, oh, is that even possible that I can sell a business? I had no idea about that. And I remember very distinctly where I was exactly when she said that to me. And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to sell the business. I had no idea why I said it or how, what made me say that. I hadn't even discussed with my business partner. And then I went back to her and I said, listen, somebody wants to buy us. I'm like, done with this. Are you okay to sell it? She said she had just returned back from London and she was getting into this whole piece of, this is our business and we're building it. But I think that's where also this piece around friendship, tops everything else. That was out of rule amongst ourselves, unwritten. There were many agreements that we signed. And she said, well, if you're not in, then I'm not in. So it's fine. Let's sell it. And that was it. And that's how the sale began. It took over a year, finally sell the business. And then a year on, we had to continue to stay there. But we eventually sold it in 2012.
How did that feel?
It felt very light and very empty at the same time. It felt really light to let it go. Because we were clear about why we were letting it go, but we had no clue what we were going to do with it. And I remember at that time also going and having a conversation with my Guruji and Ma and telling her that, they're making me a really fancy offer to stay on in the business. And, as an employee, as a senior leadership person, and making me like quite an irresistible financial offer. And she said, if you don't make space for something, you'll never know what comes. Mm. And unless you don't make space for it, it's not going to come. And so I just decided to let it go.
Mm. How did you discover coaching?
just like this. Is part of the scene of that business. So they hired a coach and they said, why don't you stay on as the chief people's officer for this new business? And we are hiring you a coach to help you understand what that means and help you transition into this role. And I said to them that no, I know I don't want to do this role. So you're wasting your money. Yes, we're anyway on this 1 year of you have to be with the company after you've sold it. So why don't we're investing in you. And so I said, fine. I had no idea what coaching was or that there could be anything like a coaching business at that time. And so I met this gentleman. He was a gentleman from UK. And we were having a conversation. And in 3 or 4 sessions, I said, I was certain even in the beginning that I don't want to do this work as this chief people's officer. But I'm now certain that I want to do the work that you are doing. So can you tell me a little bit more about what you are doing? And that's how I figured out that there is a business and there's work called coaching.
What was it about coaching in particular that drew you as a next step in your career?
There were two things, especially with this gentleman who was coaching. One was the kind of conversations that he was having with me was not surface level. It seemed like deeper, seemed like a spiritual conversation. And I asked him that you seem like a really spiritual person and there seems to be much more to it. And then he shared with me a little bit about his spiritual journey. So I was bang on that piece. And the other is the kind of conversations he was having with me. I felt that those are the kind of conversations I had with all the people who worked with us at the little company. So I felt that I could be good at it, because that's how I would speak to everyone else. So if it's spiritual and if it's talking to people and listening, I didn't know at that time listening was a skill in coaching, but just the piece of conversing was easy. So I said, okay, let me go and learn and figure that out. So you want me to go ahead, share all those coaching programs that I did? But
well, I think there were two in particular that stood out. The first was with your first mentor, Peter Redding. If you can share a bit about meeting him and why he in particular resonated with you at the time.
Yeah, for that I have to go a little bit, in reverse gears. Because I had made this money through the sale of my business, I discovered that this kind of work that this gentleman was working with me, Thomas Goldthorpe was his name, and I want to do that, and it's called coaching. So I actually went onto like a computer screen at that time, and just like looked at coaching and looked at the schools, literally drew my finger from up to bottom where it stopped. I enrolled in that course, which was a 9-month course that I had paid some money so I could pay for it. And I joined this 9-month ICF accredited course and discovered that, okay, now I'm a coach. And in that program, we had to select our designation of a coach. And so mindfulness was the buzzword at that time, but I had selected fulfillment coaching. And my teacher in the course said, why don't you go with mindfulness? It's similar to fulfillment. And lots of people are fulfillment coaches. Mindfulness coaches are not many. So I became a mindfulness coach with no clue as to what mindfulness is, but it was just nice, fancy designation to have. And I started a business because I saw myself as a serial entrepreneur who's built a business, sold it, learned coaching, and started another business. And I failed. I fell flat on my face and failed miserably at it. I went on for 1 year. For the first time, I was putting in money and not receiving any money back kind of business. And so I decided that coaching is what I want to do. But let me go back to the corporate sector, work. And when I went back to work again, with my great self of saying, hey, I'm a certified coach. This is what I want to do. I've sold a business. That we come and work here and lead coaching. And they said, no, you have to redo a coach training program with us if you want to work with us, which is the place where I went to work. And that's where I met Peter Redding, who I really still consider as my father in coaching. Because doing that course with him really felt like coming home to myself. And what I mean by that specifically is that this spiritual journey of mine that continued the first time that I met Ma in 2003, continued as I had sold this business in 2012. And then I did this course with Peter Redding in 2015 or so. And I found my spiritual path and my material pursuit just come together like it was meant. And and that's how I landed in coaching and not left or don't plan to leave since then.
What was the business model of that other coaching company that failed?
Oh, that business model that I started was called Within Me. So I somewhere knew that it's something to do with inward, but I called it Within Me. And I was trying to build a platform which was called Share, Live, and Give. And share was the piece around the whole coaching piece of it, where I looked at it as sharing. Live was the piece around being able to contribute and serve and, go back to community and do all of that. No, give was that. And live was the piece of experiences that would support this share and give kind of piece. Something like that. That was the kind of business model. And I thought it was a great idea, fabulous. And people would just lap it up. But nobody did. And since I had come from an education background and run daycare centers, I got a few people who were willing to do coaching for like parents or teachers or principals, but they really didn't quite understand it. And they were more like, can you just tell us how to build this business kind of piece? That's what I didn't want to do. I wanted to do coaching and it didn't work out.
Didn't work out. Yeah. So what lesson did you take from that experience?
That recognize when it's not working out and like cut your losses and leave early and but restart.
Yeah.
Don't give up on what you want to do, but cut your losses early.
Yeah. Yeah. So then Peter Redding ignited your coaching journey. You started working for his organization.
No, I actually worked for a leadership development firm that was bringing Peter Redding to India,
Got it.
working for that firm, which is an India-based firm. And because I was so headstrong about, I only wanted to do coaching. And so they said, okay, you can build a coaching practice, part of which was running coach training for Peter's course in India, which they were running it as, one of the many things that they offered. For me, it was like, okay, I have to make this thing profitable. So just getting people into the class was one part. And they said, the person who owned the firm said, since you like it so much, why don't you start facilitating? And I said, I had never facilitated in my life before. And so I said, yeah, why not? And then Peter trained me to facilitate and hold space for, a group of people. Then I used to facilitate the coach training with him for 2-3 years after that. And then through that, I was pursuing my learning journey of ICF accreditation. And so I went through all the courses that Peter offered independently towards, gaining coach training. And so in 2018, after I'd spent 3 years in this firm, grown it to be profitable, I decided to step out from the firm. And I think the entrepreneur in me continued to remain. And so I decided, okay, let me go back to entrepreneurship and start my own firm, which was when I started back to source coaching at that time. And I think it's grace that Peter, the organization that we were part of, they decided to close their coaching practice and not work with Peter anymore. And so he literally, we worked out hand in hand. And I continued then to offer his work in the Indian market, but under my own brand name. And that's how that journey of coach training started. But then I had got 100 odd hours of coaching or a little bit more. So I'd started a little coaching practice of my own, and I was now gaining my feet in that space.
What lessons were you then applying that you had learned from the failure of Within Me that
Yeah,
allowed Practice Source to grow?
I don't think I really thought so much about the failures of Within Me as much as I thought about the success of the little company. That this is what I love to do, and this is another extension of me, and let me just grow it as me, as in not me, but just like from within me, let's say. But it was like when I would run a coach training, and we would do it all in person at that time. I would like set up the room exactly like if I'd have people home, and I'd want them to feel warm, whether it's with incense or whether it's the right lighting and whether there's flowers, but to have an experience, walk into that experience. So it was more really about continuing this aspect of offering that which I learned and which I enjoyed, and continuing in, I think, the energy of offering and extending what I found great joy in, and just inviting other people in was how I started building Back to Source, and I continue to build it just in that way, even inviting people in to work with us, or inviting people in to see whether this is a right fit in, and just come and have an experience with us and see if it's great, then we continue. And that's really how we continue to build it.
Yeah. How and when did you meet Leon Vanderpool?
Oh, that's such a beautiful story. It's and one that I will never forget. I was at an APAC conference in 2019, and I was. It was a large conference, and I stepped out, and Leon had stepped out at the same time. I didn't know he was Leon at that time, and I think we just saw each other, and I was trying to be a little cheeky with him, and I said, "Hey, is it boring in there?" And like was trying to be a little cheeky. And he said, "No, no, I'm just out. I'm just going to see if there's somebody who's going to buy my book. And I've written a book and I've carried a few copies. I'm just going to see if somebody's going to buy it." And so I said, "I'll buy it." And I just went, not knowing who he is or what's the book that he's written. It's called The Shift in Being. And when I saw the name, Shift in Being, I said, "Oh, I run for Go Back to Source. So, and will you write it in?" I'm writing, sending me the copy. And he said, "Yeah, sure." He wrote something around Back to Source on that copy. And I said, "I think we'll work together." I have no clue why I said it. I just said, "I think we'll work together." And he said, "Yeah, sure, we can talk about that." And that's how I think our relationship began. And then a little later, after I had bought the book, we had this little exchange. We went back into the main room. I thought the person I was talking to was now on stage. And, he was sitting there. There was everyone else like sitting in this great straight posture. And he was like completely chill in that look. And he just, the few minutes that he spoke, and it wasn't a very long, it was part of a panel. The audience was like at a different level. He just circulated a paper, and I had that paper also. And he said, "What are your top 5 spiritual values?" And just that, the discussion of that and what he shared from that. At the end of that, entire crowd was going to see and meet this person called Leon Vanderpool. And I was waiting by the side because I'd already told him we'll work together. So I waited for him to finish. And then I said, we'll work together. So how do we make that happen? So he just happened to be staying in the same neighborhood. He had taken an Airbnb where I was staying. And so we drove back home, and we decided, I dropped him off, and we decided that, okay, we'll try, we talk about it. And we set a few dates. And then, the rest of the story.
Yes. Yes. What impact did the Deep Coaching Intensive have on you?
Well, I like to also say that when I met with Peter, and like I felt that merging, I felt that it took me on with my Guruji, my inward journey started. With Peter Redding, I felt the merging of that inner and outer plane. And when I met with Leon and experienced Deep Coaching Intensive, I felt I just dropped like almost 10,000 feet inside of myself. And it was the work, the Bhagavad Gita, the impact that the Bhagavad Gita had on me, and my Guruji says always that that's, knowledge that's secret, that can be lived and embodied and taught, but can never be monetized. And I respect that piece. But I felt here is this work that gives an outer expression, that uses coaching as a modality, that says nothing different from the Bhagavad Gita. And that's how it landed and felt for me. And so it was a marriage made in heaven.
Mm. And then you brought this work to India. And what has the response in India been to this work?
Fabulous. I mean, you're taking people back to their roots in a language that they understand, can relate to, and can find resonance with. And so, India is a spiritual land, as at least known to be a spiritual land. And right from the very first day, even when I used to bring Peter's work, I would speak to it as a spiritual based coach training program. Uh, Different from what everyone else would talk. Yes, I'm CF accredited, but spiritual based coach training program. And everyone who has come to it has come to it from that understanding and has loved it and grown with it. And it's now been 7 years. Soon will be 7 years, 6 years complete. Next year will be our seventh year. Uh, and there's another thing that, again, I had no clue. When I said to Leon that I want to work with you, and I also said in quite a pompous way, I think that I'm going to facilitate the work as well. And he, in his usual style, said, "Yeah, sure, do everything that I said." And when I experienced the program myself for the first time in 2000, I said, "God, what have I walked myself into? There's no way that I can facilitate this. I can't do this at all." And he was like so gentle and kind and said, "Yeah, sure, you manage. That'll happen." And so I then shadowed him, then took on pieces that I felt comfortable doing, to, now a space where I feel so grateful and joyous. And like, I don't like, can't, I've stopped saying that, Len, do these classes, you do these classes, Leon. It's like, I feel so comfortable in the work, and allow for it to continue to inform me that now is like, if you can't show up for this class, no problem, I'll take it. And there's the ease and grace and flow that this work has brought in my life. And each time I teach it, um, I learn. Each time I teach it, I learn.
There's also something else you learned in this process, and that was sort of the human, you could say human nature, or the nature of Indians and their relationship to learning, meaning
Mm.
assumption that Indians only wanted to learn in person.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that assumption and how it evolved over time?
So actually, it started with I used to always run an in-person program with Peter, and then when COVID hit, we had to move it to an online format. And even when I met with Leon, it was just pre-COVID, and we had decided on dates to do it as an in-person program. And then we had to move it online. And I think that both Peter, Leon, myself were so, I think, convinced about what this work can offer. And yes, moving it to an online format seemed challenging when we did it at that point, but we were like committed to it. And so we did everything that we can, from the lighting to the green screen behind, to all of those at those days, to make that experience rich for the participant who was coming online. And we kept it like, even though we had like full house registrations for the first in-person program with Leon, the one that I was doing with Peter, we shared with everyone, like, we're moving it online and it's your choice. If you want to come and experience it, great. If you don't want to come, that's fine. We refund your money completely. So again, it was that space of invitation, our commitment to give it our best. And we did. And not everybody who signed up, some people did take their money back, but not a single one of them has not experienced the course. They came back later, and then we only kept it online because it seemed like the perfect way to reach so many more people, uh, to be able to, flexibility of being able to do it online. And especially in the deep coaching intensive work, I cannot imagine it ever being an in-person course because it's so intense that you experience it 1 week, you learn about it, you get that whole week to integrate. You think you've got the whole week to integrate, and then you come back, you learn some more, and it's like that in that small doses over that 7 months. Is I can't imagine doing it any other way.
Yeah. So interesting how things change, huh? Perspectives, point of views.
Yeah, yeah,
You have a new passion project in Soulful Leadership. Can you tell us a little more about Soulful Leadership and what that means for you?
yeah. It's again this great desire. I mean, as I would coach leaders and continue to coach leaders, I constantly would hear this great, deep yearning to what they were experiencing with me in coaching, which is taking this inward journey and living from a space of greater authenticity, from a greater connection to who they are. They were like, what if our whole organization could be like this? And what if my team could be like this? And I could hear that yearning, but I think there was this fear in them to also champion something like this because it doesn't have, um, you know, business metrics, so to say, the soulful organization, the way I call it. I moved from culture of humanness to awakening spirit at work to spirituality in the boardroom to arriving at soulful organizations, which is now my passion project. But I sensed this yearning. I felt that there was something that I could offer to ignite that spark. And so I said, okay, let me do something about it. And let me just put something out there and see how people take to it. And I would say that everyone I've shared it with has been like, wow, this is what the world needs. Of course, it's like, sure. But when it comes to like actually getting onto the project, there are very few who adopted it. But that hasn't in any which way, dimmed my light, so to speak, on this project for a couple of reasons. One is I met with and found people who believed in it as much as I did and were willing to come on and say, okay, let's do this together. So that collaborative spirit of a little team of 7 that has come together to do this. Couple of organizations who trusted us and experienced it and said, wow, and we now want to do it for a year-long journey. So we know that it works, what we intuitively felt and believed. We've been able to find a midway in terms of being able to talk their language of the organization, but also instill this new vocabulary of emergence and resonant potential and illumination and pieces like that, and allowing and grace and love, which is our language that we're infusing. And I enjoy it.
Oh, that is so wonderful. What do you think it is about the leaders that have the initial enthusiasm and then are hesitant to jump on board?
I think it's just fear and they've been conditioned to believe that they as leaders should work on certain kind of organization metrics that deliver value. And they see the value in this, but they are not yet able to translate it into how does this deliver value. And so I think that's where the struggle is. And I'm sure that with the work that we do, we will build that case for it. In fact, just like when I started the daycare business, we had to educate people about the daycare. So I think in social organizations, I also now set on this venture of educating people about what does it mean to do the inner work and see outer impact. How can the workplace become like a fertile soil for transformation? So we're trying to curate different like these free online events for people to come in just to have a conversation around it. And we're holding space for that. So we're educating the market because we believe greatly in it.
Oh, it is so needed. It is so needed. And I do really do believe it will be adopted widely as the world continues to be disrupted and folks have no choice but to go within, not just folks, but organizations as well.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I trust it fully. And whether it works out or not, I'm having a blast with this group of people and we're building it. And it's just, we're building a soulful organization and I'm sure we'll support many others to do the same.
That's right. That's right. So as we wrap up here, Amrita, if you could leave listeners with one invitation, something to reflect on or practice in their own transformational journey, what might that be?
I would say honor yourself and practice self-care. And it may look like, going for a massage when you begin, to journaling, to taking time off and going off on a retreat, to spending time with yourself, to doing the things that you enjoy. Could be anything, but, prioritize yourself in your life. Self-care is not something that can ever be outsourced, ever. And you've got to do that work. And that work starts inner work, even though it may take different shapes, start from this external place, but eventually you'll land inward. And as you land inward, you'll meet with yourself. And there's nothing better than that.
Oh, Thank you so much, Amrita. I mean, you're just such an incredible powerhouse in a humble, peaceful sort of way. And the gift that you are to so many people in this world is just palpable, and you're doing incredible work out there. So thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about today's guest, visit our podcast landing page at www.podcast.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. You'll find links to their website, social media, and anything else they might want to share there. And if you're curious to explore more about our work, our trainings, or the deep coaching approach, you'll find everything at www.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. A new episode of this podcast releases every 2 weeks, so please subscribe wherever you listen to stay up to date. Until next time, stay present, embrace love, and continue sensing into what life is calling you toward. See you soon.